Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Andrew Zara, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can mix down a professional tune just using Ableton stock plugins. So let's dive right in. Okay, so I'm going to use a case in point for this particular video, and this is not a track breakdown. This is for me to show you how I mixed down a track which actually got put on vinyl and it got released on a very good label, Cecile. As you may know, I've done a few track breakdowns of my Cecile records on this channel, so you're very familiar with that. But this isn't a straight up track breakdown on how I made the track. What I did essentially with this record is I mixed down the whole track just using Ableton stock plugin. Really, you don't need fancy plugins to mix down your music and get a professional sound. I really believe that, and this is a good case in point. So let's have a look at the project. Okay, so I'm not going to play the full track, but let's go in each channel and show you what I did and how you can use this in your own productions today. Right, let's start off with the main heartbeat of the whole track, the kick drum here. Now, I don't really get bogged down with crazy leveling and visual plugins like to show you so much stuff. I really go by instinct ear, and my ear is my first sort of line of defense. I use plugins secondary, so if I feel like the sound is not good enough, I will not use it. So that comes down to sample selection, and I talked about that a lot on the channel, so I'm not going to delve into that today. But I felt like this kick drum was just really good from the offset and didn't need a lot of work. So here I'm cutting off mid-range. Essentially the reason for that is that I want to leave room for future elements coming through. So the bass line was quite mid-range. So I realized that when they're both playing at the mid-range at the same time, they were fighting for a bit of space. So ducking that, just let this bass line, which I'm going to play in a second, really shine through. So this is the only plugin I use from an external VST, and it's Decapitator. So I just felt like Decapitator does a great job of adding those frequencies which are kind of missing, and a bit of dirt, which the only plugin I really can't get in Ableton the same as Decapitator. So I think this is the only VST I've used externally. So some simple sidechain here, a little bit of Decapitator just to get that kind of crunch which I was missing. If I turn it off, sounds a little bit tin, and back on again. Beautiful. Here the EQ isn't doing much actually. I wanted to see what was going on in those real low frequencies and see if it was anything kind of fighting for space. And when I play them, not too much. Next is a little bit of vinyl. I like to put vinyl on there. It just adds a little bit of so here I'm just sort of starting to layer up textures, and when you layer up textures and when you layer up maybe drum samples or whatever you're using in that particular moment, it's important to realize that everything needs its own space. Everything's going to fight for some degree of space. So the first thing I do is solve the problem. So the problem here with this was that it was just, it's way too open. But hiding it, pulling those frequencies in, it's really just made it fit in the mix. And an old piece of advice I got, and I still use it to this day, and I got it from a music production course I did in Australia many moons ago, and the tutor said to me, always cut over boosting, and that stuck with me. Same with this drum sample. Just using the kind of mid to high range of this sample was what I just needed in this particular moment here. that. Didn't need much here. Alright guys, just before we get back into the mixing, if you're enjoying this content, please feel free to check out my Artist Flow studio, which the link is in the description. Here you'll see longer tutorials and more in-depth music production content, which is sure to help you get your music better. And you have a chance to work with me privately one-to-one on your music. So if this sounds like something you'd be interested in and want to level up on your music and confidence in the music production world, then simply click the link in the description and I'll see you on the other side. Now, let's get back into the video. Okay, continue on the drums. I really like to use EQ8. It's such a quick tool and you can use the Pro Q, and that's something that I do as well. But I just wanted to do a very quick mix down here. Now this is obviously a more advanced EQ and I would definitely use this too. But in this particular record, I wanted just to kind of do something more quick, and Ableton's EQ8 did a great job. So here on this drum, again, letting the frequencies live and breathe in the space that it needs to. So with that above loop here, it lives in this region. So what I did was, in this particular drum group, is that I pulled away from there to let that other sample breathe, because they will be playing at the same time. So just by letting them breathe, by separating, that's, in my opinion, the main goal of EQing, is to really sort of utilize that kind of concept of letting things breathe and have space. Again, some more cutting, a little bit of boosting. This is very quiet. It's actually so quiet that's not even really audible. Just a little bit of layer. Okay, so now moving on, that is all the drums, and with the drums I would definitely just sort of continue to layer up very softly, and levels to me are also mixing as well. So bear in mind that I'm really pulling these guys down here on the bottom left with the volume, because if something is too loud, it also gets in the way of space, and we really need space in our track in general. And by just understanding volumes and frequencies, you can really make something sound very special and very professional. So again, pulling the volume down on this thing here, taking away any sub frequencies. I pull it down on the limiter, I think, just give it less volume, and a little bit of distortion here with the vinyl. Add some crackle here, a little quick tip, but I didn't do in this case. So I turn them off. Also fine, but just a little bit of pulling it back. And when you hear it in the context, okay, musical elements here. Similar concept really, guys, and yeah, okay. One of the main chords here. Okay, I looked at this chord and I realized, I go, look, this doesn't need too much. It doesn't need to be boosted or frequencies removed. So that's another interesting point, is that if there's no problem to be solved, then don't solve it. Like, you don't have to add an EQ because you have to. You know, there's some sounds which naturally sound good, and in that case, just leave them be. Everything sits on each other so nicely because everything has its own space and home, and when it all kind of comes together like a nice cake, you can really hear and feel that the sounds are, there's nothing that's fighting with each other. And that's all done through the good source and sample selection mixed with the kind of techniques with EQ and saturation. So here I have a vocal idea, which is sort of, again, I will go a little bit more deep here on some more stereo kind of mixing, and in this case I added a kind of it's called hybrid reverb in Ableton, and kind of what it does is it's kind of has a built-in EQ, and it kind of does, again, a hybrid is something that's kind of put together. So I don't know the ins and outs of this particular reverb, but it's like an EQ and a reverb basically mixed together, and it kind of affects it in a different way. The reverb is built differently. It's a different algorithm, and I picked different settings, but essentially it's a reverb and EQ together with a bit of a different feel to it. So I essentially put on top of the channel some auto pan, sending things left and right, some limiting, some chorus, and another limiter. So I felt like this limiter again is just a sort of when I'm at the end of the process, I just need to tone down the volume a little bit. Because when I added these plugins in, now adding 6 and taking away 6 does the same thing. So I could probably take these both off. But I left the both on, and this is a chorus. This is free, by the way, Tal chorus. Ableton also good. Again, one of the little plugins I use externally was just Tal and Decapitator in those two instances, but 99% Ableton plugins. On the group, I have a beautiful Ableton saturator which they've improved in 12, and I am just adding this to the group of vocal elements. Some echo on a pre-drop, and creatively I'm doing a little bit here. So here with the filter, I'm actually ducking it out to add a bit of tension and let it build up again. So I discussed that in an earlier video of like this kind of V-shaped model where I'd have things kind of shaving off and then coming up again to kind of build tension and kind of build the tension up again. So just some automation there with the chord. Some tension building with a sound it built. Really cool. This crash again didn't need anything, so I just pitched up that one there, but it's not a breakdown, but just processing, didn't need any. On this horn stab, which is adding a little bit of a harmonic value, I've done quite a little bit actually with this one. I feel like I just needed all this. Let me take them all off and see what the difference is. Probably not that much actually. Yeah, I wanted to make it a bit more tucked away. So I think what I did was I just sort of added a little bits of a filter, a bit of delay, and sort of added back in a bit of high end that was missing from the filter. And I use limiters just to kind of tame volumes. And if I want, I can actually automate the volume on the limiter if I need to increase down the line. I think I did it on a bit of a channel, but I would recommend doing this automation on a utility plugin or a limiter because it's easier to handle and manage it down the line when you're mixing everything. Because if I want to change all the channel volumes, it's quite hard now because I've actually affected all the individual volume in the channel. But not to worry. And that is it. And the master chain is just pull down in volumes here. This reverb stuff here is just for effect here. I like to add some high end reverbs on the master, just a little bit to kind of add that bit of spacey, airy feel just before it kind of kicks back in. Is a real nice thing to do. Sure what it's up there. I never add any saturation to master channels. Guys, if you're gonna get into mastering, then by all means, but if you add on a saturator or some sort of mastering plugin onto the master and you don't know what it's doing, okay, run with it, but you kind of have to know what you're doing in that case. And if you can make the track sound good without any saturation plugins or the kind of boosters and stuff on the master, then I think you've done a better job. because if you take that plugin off and it just kind of falls apart, then you know that you're depending on that plugin, and you might end up producing with it on all the time, thinking you're making some banger, but then when you take it off, it all just falls apart. So that was the breakdown, guys. Hope you liked it. Please feel free to leave a comment if you have any opinions on what I've done. I'd love to hear how you mix down your music if you use much external plugins, or a like and subscribe would really help the channel grow. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.